Hi everyone, I am about to introduce to you author Jonathan Wyler, and we're going to be talking about a book that he co-wrote called Prius or Pickup, and it's right here. And it is such an interesting book about our country, about who we are and who we vote for and why. And the statistics in this book are just overwhelming, but I would found it like just fascinating. Okay. So I can't wait. I didn't even make notes because I usually make notes while I'm reading a book, but I listened to this book and I was like, I don't even know what to say. I'm just going to see what he says because I would have taken pages and pages and pages. So there was no like, oh, this is what I should do. I mean, it is like incredible the amount of research he did for this book. So, anyway, I do think that it's just Jonathan showing up, and I'm not even sure, but we'll see. I think so. I think it's just him. So let's get to it. Here is Jonathan. Hi, everyone. I am so excited because today I am speaking with author Jonathan Wyler, and we are talking about his brand new book. Just came out in October. He is going to hold it up. It's called Prius or Pickup. And he is the co-author of this book. And you can't see the thing, but it's his name's Mark Hetherington.
Hetherington,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And what a book! I listened to this book. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Oh my gosh. Like usually I sit and take notes. I couldn't take notes. There were so many statistics. I was like, oh my gosh, I just have to listen. Just absorb. Don't think too much. Just let you tell me the statistics. And I love statistics, but this is incredible. It's incredible. I can't even imagine the research that you guys had to do to put in this book.
Well, we've been working on this project for a long time. Probably 15 years now. And we wrote a previous book in 2009, an academic book called Authoritarianism and Polarization in American Politics, which was based on many of the same concepts. And then in 2016, that book, perhaps for obvious reasons, started getting much more mainstream attention. Which caused Houghton Mifflin to approach us and ask us, have you guys ever thought about writing a version of that book, but for a wider audience, which is how we ended up writing this book. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure that I'm sure you get this all the time, but like as I was listening to the narrator read, and in my head I'm like, oh, but wait, I like that. Oh, wait, but I'm on the. You constantly are trying to compare yourself to the statistics.
Yes.
And,
yes.
And so I found that interesting. Like I kept doing that. But I think the part that I love the most is because I was born, my dad worked for a union. He worked for Mack Trucks. Neither one of my parents graduated from high school. Okay, they had me in high school, so neither one of them graduated. So I grew up in a very Democrat family, but we went to an evangelical church, which so as I'm listening to your book, I'm like, no wonder my life is so full of contradictions. It just made so much sense.
Well, and of course, Michelle, what you're describing was very normal in the era that you're talking about.
Interesting.
When many Democratic households were Democratic and they were loyal to Franklin Roosevelt, but they were also conservative in many of the ways that you're describing, and they were church going, and they would not have embraced. I was about to say they would not have embraced various kinds of social change, but 60 or 70 years ago, they weren't forced to make those kinds of decisions or choices because we lived in a more homogenous world back then. So people didn't have to make those choices and sort of decide, well, which side of that divide am I on? Mm-hmm. Because, to take one example, gay rights, no one was really talking about gay rights 60 years ago. So you didn't have to decide, well, I'm pro or against because it wasn't an issue on the table at all. So I think it's one of the things that's happened is as all of these issues have become, as choice has multiplied, political choice and other kinds of choices, what kinds of cars to drive, what kinds of food to eat, etc., these other kinds of differences have emerged in a way that are politically relevant.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I loved in the book also. And then we'll talk about like the four questions,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
thing. But I just like telling you the parts that I really like, clung
yeah,
on to, is about the news media nowadays, because I never thought of it the way that you guys describe it. It's like we had one set of news, whether you watched which main channel you watched didn't matter. They were
right.
all going to tell you the same thing anyway. So basically, it was your preference on what weather guy you liked. I remember weather being a big thing. Like, well,
Yes, yes, yes.
but you were going to get the same news. It wasn't like, oh, ABC is going to show different news than NBC and CBS. We're all going to say the same thing. So it kind of brought us together because we were all hearing the same news. And when you talked about now the introduction of, among so many others, but CNN and Fox, where you're on a team now. Now news is you're on a team. Are you a Fox listener? Are you CNN? And they're not telling you the same news, and it's completely different news cycle.
Yeah.
And as I was listening to that chapter, I was like, wow, I didn't even think, like, that is our life. Like, that is, we are that generation that it all changed. And so I thought maybe, you'd want to talk about that a little bit, but I just found it fascinating.
Well, and it's worth saying, Michelle, that much more homogenous news worlds that you grew up in and that I grew up in, has its downsides too.
Right.
Right? I mean, the homogenous media for a long time gave us a really limited and problematic picture of what we were and weren't doing in Vietnam, for example.
Right.
And it used to be, a lot of people don't like scandal politics nowadays because it seems so gossipy and trivial, and we live in this gotcha world. On the other hand, did the public have a right to know that President Kennedy had very serious health problems that were never revealed to the public? I think they did.
Right.
And so, it's not that it's bad that there's more choice. It's just that there's a downside to it.
Right.
And in the case of media, it's as you said. I mean, we are being given completely different versions of reality. Which is troubling and problematic. And so the whatever positives to media choice there are also these incredibly negative ones.
Right. What do you find fast? I mean, you've written all these statistics. Okay, I was like, and as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, what surprised him or them? What was what stood out to you as being surprising in all of it?
Yeah, that's a good question, Michelle. I mean, to go back to the four questions, which I know we'll talk about. After doing this research for, as I said, close to 15 years now, I think on some level we are still surprised that these four questions that ask people, what qualities do you think it's more important for children to have, tell us so much about people's politics. It's still, I mean, in a way, I've had some version of this conversation 1,000 times now, but still, every once in a while I take a step back and I'm like, why are these four questions so revealing? Why do they tell us so much? So kind of big picture, I'm still surprised by that a little bit. There was, I mean, as you say, there's a lot of data in the new book, although it is, I want to assure everybody, I think it's a readable book.
Oh, yeah. I highly recommend the Audible, too, for anybody out there that, is in a long car ride or something. I really enjoyed the Audible a lot.
I have a few friends who have listened to the audio version and actually liked it a lot. Yeah. So
Yeah.
So one statistic, I mean, there's lots, but one data point in the book that surprised me is we asked a question about whether you disagree with the statement that it's better for women to be in the home and for men to go out and earn. Okay, and this is in 2017, not 1957. And among the group of people we call fluid, who answer those parenting questions in a liberal direction, 90% disagree with that statement, right? That women should stay in the home and men should go out and earn. And among the fixed, those people who answered those four parenting questions in a conservative direction, 50% disagreed with the statement. So there's a 40-point gap in 2017 on that question. Of course, there's many, many others, but that one, I think what surprises us both still is not just that there are differences based on these questions, but how big the differences are.
Right.
You know, which we try to convey in the book to give people sort of a benchmark for appreciating, you know, what a big deal a 40-point difference is, you know, in survey research. But it's, I think that remains surprising to both of us.
Well, you know what I love about this, and then we will tell everybody what it is, the questions.
Yeah.
Is that I've been a mom. My oldest son is 31.
Okay.
My youngest son, I have 6 children. My youngest son is 15. Okay. So I have a 15 to 16, almost 16-year age gap, right? And
yeah.
I was thinking as I read that, those questions I would answer differently now.
Very interesting. So can you give me an example?
Yeah, well, what I would have thought was important to teach my older children, especially my older 3 who are kind of all bunched together, I now would say, I don't think that I agree with myself anymore. Like,
that's very interesting.
You know?
That's very interesting.
Yeah. So.
And actually, you're raising a really important point, Michelle, because this kind of work, political psychology, it does tend to convey the idea that whatever we are, we're just that, and people never change and they don't evolve. And of course, that's not true, right? People do change and people do evolve, some more than others, of course. But it's worth remembering that. You know, it's easy to read books like ours and think, oh, well, we're all just kind of where we are,
right,
and nobody's budging, and you know, and there is truth in that, but it's not true for everybody.
Right.
So.
Okay, well, let everybody know. Let's.
Yeah. So there are this survey question, and we did not make it up. A scholar named Stanley Feldman did about 30 years ago, and there have been versions of these parenting questions kicking around for decades now. But in their current form, the way they're very commonly asked, and the way we've been asking them for a long time now, is people are told. People have different ideas about what are important qualities for children to have, and I'm going to give you pairs of choices, and you tell me which is more important. And they're considerate versus well-behaved, their curiosity versus good manners, their independence versus respect for elders, and their think for oneself versus obedient. So one thing worth saying, because we get this reaction all the time, well, people say, I think they're all important.
Right.
And for example, I have a 21-year-old daughter. She's in college now.
Mm-hmm.
So I always say, if you ask me, do I want my daughter to be curious? The answer is definitely yes. Mm-hmm. But when we used to take her out to eat, it's not like I wanted her to be a disgusting slob in a restaurant. So yes, I would like for her to have good manners. So I think most people look at those 8 attributes and think those all sound good. What's interesting, though, is what happens when you force people to make choices, right? When you say, which is more important to you, how people prioritize those things, that's what becomes extremely politically revealing. And it turns out that people who say curious, independence, thinks for oneself, and considerate are what we describe as fluid on the liberal end of the spectrum. And the folks who say well behaved, respect elders, good manners are on the other side of the spectrum, and we call those fixed. And I just want to make one more point, Michelle, which is that people have always differed on how they answer these questions and differed on worldview, which is this kind of larger construct that we describe. What's changed is that even 30 years ago, many Democrats were fluid, but many other Democrats were also fixed, like your family, right? And on the other side, many Republicans were fixed, but many Republicans were also fluid. What's happened is the parties have sorted themselves out, or people have sorted themselves out into the parties. So the fluid folks have overwhelmingly migrated to the Democratic Party. The fixed folks have overwhelmingly migrated to the Republican Party. So there's now an alignment between worldview and partisanship. And that's what's given partisanship today its incredible sort of anger and intensity.
Interesting. Because there does seem to be so much anger more now than I, in my lifetime.
Yes.
I can't even remember a time that, and I am a homeschooling mom. See, I have all these contradictions, but I am a homeschooling mom. I've homeschooled all my children on and off. Some have gone to school, but all of them at different times in their life. So I've studied a lot of history. And
okay.
I love presidents. I think, we just lost a president, okay? And what I love seeing is both parties coming together to mourn a president. Mm-hmm. I love that about our country, that we can put aside political differences, and I was like, I hope he's not the last one. I hope that we can always do that,
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's difficult because I don't think we've ever had a president before, like President Trump, where if you say, well, you know what, he's our president, he's our president, right? Yeah. People look at you and be like, no, you can't accept that. It's right. Like, you can't accept that. I'm also a military mom. I had 2 sons who are vets. I was a military wife. I lived on Andrews Air Force Base. So I have that other part of me too, that is like country, and especially because in the military, you're taught you accept the leader. Like he's the leader.
Well, he's the commander in chief.
You accept it, right? So, but in accepting him, it has become very difficult. And we all find ourselves in that kind of situation. I don't know. I don't know. I want your thoughts on that, on why it feels more difficult.
Well, I mean, I do think one of the reasons it does feel more difficult, to go back to this sort of worldview for a moment. And what I'm about to describe is a simplified version of history, but
right. That's okay.
So that's the way it goes.
Okay.
But, at one time, when political conflict was more focused on issues like the size of government, it's not that those issues were not contentious. There was plenty of conflict. There was plenty of animosity. Anybody who lived through the 1960s will tell you we've had previous periods of tremendous unrest and anger. So I don't want to overstate that everything was great until 10 years ago.
Right.
But the nature of the things that we argue about today creates more emotional intensity in almost everything we argue about. So, look, we've been arguing about race for a long time.
Right.
But we're also arguing about feminism. Now we're arguing about transgender rights, and about gay rights, and about terrorism, and about immigration. And these are these issues that people don't have to think very hard about what they believe. They just know. And they know because these are the kinds of issues that speak to our very gut level values. One thing we say in the book is that these worldview differences between the fixed and the fluid in a lot of ways boil down to this question of what's your orientation to the world? Are you comfortable embracing a world of diversity and difference and change? Or do you feel like the world is better if we kind of keep things the way they are, keep things the same, stick with the tried and true, be wary of strangers because strangers can hurt us?
Right.
And the issues that we're fighting about now, in many ways, sort of tap into those very basic orientations people have. So it is all visceral and emotional, and it's not like it's in our hearts and our guts, not in our heads, that we're mostly thinking about politics.
Right.
And I think it's that difference that's making politics so intense. So, back to your point, Michelle, if you like a politician, I'm not just judging, oh, well, I don't agree with the politician's stance on this issue or that issue. You're telling me something fundamental about your character and your values and who you are. So if you tell me you don't like somebody, or you drive around and you've got certain bumper stickers on your car, I am making immediate judgments about the kind of person you are, right? And so there's not a lot of room there for people to have conversation and to trust each other and to sort of listen to a point of view that's different than theirs.
Yes.
So some people can still do it, but I think that in broad strokes, our politics has shifted more in that direction. And it's creating this anger and intensity that we're talking about.
Yeah, and before, no matter who was president, I would be like, well, they know better, for the most part. You can almost wrap your brain around it. Like, okay, he knows more than I do. I don't know that much. He knows more what's going on. And I'm finding now, and you're like, wait, okay. Almost like, wait, I got to think for myself. You're like, okay, well, that 100% trust thing that, we're going into, it's like, okay, just wait a second here. Like, back up,
And
everybody needs to stay off Twitter. Everybody needs to stay off.
Maybe a year ago or so, it was called The Politicization of Everything. And the article is about what it sounds like. But, so take, for example, you're in Pennsylvania, it's football country, right? Now when people think about the NFL and they think about football, they're not just thinking about how their team is doing, their fantasy football draft. A lot of them are thinking about Colin Kaepernick and the national anthem and Trump attacking the NFL. And so even football, our most popular, I'm a baseball fan, but even I concede, football is our most popular pastime. Even football, it's dividing us, and now we're taking sides, right? Because again, like everything else, it's now being processed through this meat grinder of worldview-based politics.
Right. Because I remember a lot of times, last year it was like, can we just watch a game? Can we just watch a game? How about we don't play the national anthem, and then nobody has to kneel?
And then we don't have to deal with it. Right.
Can we all just get along to watch a football game?
Yeah.
So yeah, I get that. And it is, you're right. I didn't really think about it like that. Like I was a kid in the 60s, so I didn't really, but I do remember my parents, talking about politics in the 60s, and it was very divided then too. And because they were in war and there was all kinds of things going on. But, now it just is, it's a different, we're not in, well, I guess we are in some wars and but that's not the main focus, but we are in a national, we're going through a lot of stuff right now, with the immigration and things like that. And everybody's very tense about it. And you don't know how it's going to end up. So, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and these differences that we're talking about, it seems like they all reinforce each other. So we have a liberal-conservative divide. We have a Democratic-Republican divide. We have a white-non-white divide. Mm-hmm. We increasingly have a male-female divide, right? Women are increasingly voting Democratic, men are not. We have a rural-urban divide that people are more and more commenting upon. One of the interesting pieces of data from 2016 is that whether you moved more than an hour away from where you grew up was a huge predictor of whether or not you voted for Donald Trump. People who stayed closer to home tended to vote for Trump. People who moved tended to vote for Hillary. And so all of these divides, they just reinforce each other.
Yeah.
And this is why I think a lot of people talk about political divisions today as tribal differences, because they're like in everything we do and think. And it's part of the reason for the title of the book, Prius or Pickup. People are driving different kinds of cars. People like, it's arugula versus iceberg lettuce. It's right. It's
no
Dunkin'
romaine.
Donuts.
No romaine.
What's that?
No romaine.
No romaine. Well, right. We can all agree on that.
We can all agree on that.
Right. It's Dunkin' Donuts versus Starbucks. It's all of these things.
Yes.
Just reinforce the same division that we're experiencing.
Well, I knew I was going to have fun talking to you because this book was so much fun to listen to. And I just want everybody to know that. It's just, like you said, it's not boring. I mean, you guys made it into a story and it was fun. Okay. It was a lot of fun. And it is a lot of fun to sit there and go, wait, what about this? What about that? I mean, of course, there's no, one way. But
right.
It's interesting to see because there were a lot of things I was like, I never even thought about that. I never even, so you guys did a great job. I had a lot
thank
of
you,
fun.
Michelle.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this book. And to show everybody the cover one more time, I want them to see it. I'm going to have the link listed below. This book is out right now. Even the cover. I mean, I love the cover so much. So.
Yes. We take no credit for the cover.
No credit.
The design people at Houghton Mifflin did a great job.
They sure did. So thank you so much, Jonathan. It was so much fun talking to you.
Thank you, Michelle. It was really nice to talk to you.
Okay, have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye. If you made it this far, you listened to my whole conversation with Jonathan, and it was just him, and oh my gosh, it was crazy. It's going to take me a while to come down off of this interview because that was a lot of fun. This book is fun, and it really makes you think about like even how you were raised and where you were born, and then how you've, especially me at 54, kind of like the path you took and the decisions you made and how crazy. I can't even describe it. You will love it. Link is listed below. Thank you again, Jonathan. It was so much fun talking to you. Have a great day, guys.